Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister, President Shimon Peres, my friend, one of the political men, maybe the political man on earth I respect and I admire most. I'm very honored again for the third time to co-open this meeting and very moved to do it because of you under the name and under the flag of Gilad Shalit, this bleeding wound for every Israeli, every Jew, and every Democrat in the world. I will try to reply as a simple way as possible to the question which was just asked to me by Mr. Moderator. And I would like to tell you in a few words why, as far as I believe, from my own experience from Egypt and from Libya, I believe that Israel, the Jewish people, and the Democrats have little to fear from the Arab Springs. I would like to tell you why we have not to fear the Arab Springs. I know, of course, that it is a risky situation. I know that we have in the recent past some examples of democratical processes which went and led to the worst. Gaza with Hamas, Algeria in the 90s with the Islamist butchers of the FIS and GIA, not even coming up to other examples in Europe. And I know, of course, that for all of us, me including more than anybody, it is a real serious matter, and that the security of Israel is a sufficiently serious matter not to take these topics in a light way, of course. This being considered, and the interest of Israel and of its security being, for me, also, and again, as much as anybody, a real main topic, I believe that there is little to fear from the Arab Springs. At least for 3 or 4 reasons. First of all, reasons of principles and of values. I cannot imagine a Zionist, somebody faithful to Zionism, which is the well-achieved, successful movement of liberation of the Jewish people, not embracing, not seeing with sympathy some liberation movements growing up in neighbors' country. I cannot imagine the sole democracy in the area, exceptional democracy, since so long, which is Israel. Seeing some neighboring countries trying to come on the same road, beginning to embrace the same values and closing the door or turning their back and not giving the hand. This is inconceivable, and even more conceivable, still on the ground of principle, the people, us, who invented the holy principle, thou will not kill, seeing without shame, without revolt, what is happening today, every day in Syria, and what happened 14th, 15th, 16th of last February in Libya, when Gaddafi sent his airplanes, aircrafts, to to shoot the peaceful demonstrating people. On ground of principle, there is no question. Now, you have some laws, some theoremas in political sciences, in history. You have theoremas, you have laws which apply to this situation. I tried to thought on all these topics as thoroughly as I can. One law is that democracies never make war to others' democracies. Tyrannies come at war with tyrannies. Tyrannies make war against democracies. This is the whole story of the world. But democracy against democracy, it's a fact. We have a lot of explanation of that since Montesquieu, Tocqueville, many others, but it is a sort of guarantee, not absolute, of course, but of peace. If ever the Arab world or some of these countries went to the end of the process in which they have entered, it would be a guarantee of peace. It's a law. Mr. Moderator, you spoke about chaos versus stable tyrannies. There is no stable tyranny. This is another law. Tyrannies are never stable. They are always at one time or another, by a way or another, overthrown. This is again a law of history. And when you have, for example, when a people has, for example, a treaty of peace with the tyranny, it's better than nothing, of course. But when this treaty of peace rely on a tyrann, on a despot, and especially a despot who is getting older, weaker and weaker, depending himself on the way in which he controls his own people, it is really unstable. A peace with a dictator is the weakest, the most unstable peace which one can imagine. The only way to have strong links, real peace, is to have or to dream to have it the same, endorsed, accepted, discussed, of course, and after discussion, seen as the common interest, not of the whole people, but of a majority. Democracy for peace is a better guarantee than tyranny. This is another law. And as for the word I often hear in this country and in mine, saying that Bashar al-Assad or Colonel Gaddafi are the devil we know. The devil we know. First of all, this way of seeing the topic is not really worthy, is not really at the level of the distinguished audience and of the distinguished peoples of France, Israel, and Jewish people. But, moreover, I really believe, after many stays in Libya, and after having reflected on that, whatever happens after, even if it is not, and it will not be, a British democracy in Libya, of course not. It will not be a Churchillian democracy. But whatever it be, of one thing I am pretty sure, it will never be worse for the world, for the freedom of the world, for the Jews and for Israel, than Gaddafi, who hosted the worst anti-Semites in the world, who gave word to the spokesman of denial of Holocaust in the end, who in last August tried to launch a new float of boats going to Gaza to take revenge on the previous one, and so on. Whatever the situation be, whatever imperfect is the democracy which will be the result of all that, it will not be worse. Number 3, in Libya at least, there is a reality. Not laws, not abstract laws, but concrete reality. Of course, there is a remaining, some remain of the past. Of course, the propaganda of decades, especially on anti-Semitism and hate of Israel, will not disappear as a dream, bad dream, as a nightmare. But something happened which is a huge event, which is a very big news, which is a thunderstorm in the Arab world and especially in Libya. A huge event with big E. The event is that for the first time, the people in Benghazi, the people in Misrata, the people in Tobruk, in Ashdabiyah, in Brega, in Ras Lanouf, all these cities which I visited, by the way, as a French and as a Jew, they discovered one little detail. They were told since ages, since decades, that they had one enemy, one source of all their evils, one enemy of which they had to fight till the end, which was Israel. They discovered that they had another one, a real one, a serious one, which is Gaddafi, family, regime, and so on. This return to reality, this back to real world, from chimeras for bad dreams to reality, is a huge event, is a great news. After the fall of Gaddafi, the people who will be in charge of the situation will have to build a regime, which have to build a society with real tasks and with real problems. And they will see more and more that it was a stupid propaganda, bourrage de crâne, as we say in France, putting them asleep to say that Israel was a big ghost. So this is the real reality of the situation, which makes, again, that all that is happening cannot be bad for democracy, for Israel, and for the Jews. At the end, considering, because your topic of the session is moral and real politics, if I understood well, even in terms of real politics, I believe that the same consideration works. Two possibilities. Or it works. The democratic process works, goes to a good end. Would it be good for us, for you, us Jews, you Israelis, to be the ones who would have been the last to be faithful to the defeated, the last to have been shy in front of the process? Let's imagine that it works. Is it good for a great country, a great democracy, one of the most exemplary in the world, to have been the one which stubbornly would have said it will not work? If it does not work, which is possible also in terms of real politics, would it be really good to have been the first one to say in a Cassandra way, Cassandra, it will not work. We decide it will not, and maybe to bear in the fantasy of these or those the responsibility of the failure? I don't think so. I think also that it will be a great message to the world beyond the area to say, to give a confirmation that the problem of the Jews and of Israel has never been the Arabs, but the fascism. That we are Democrats and Israel at war with fascism inside the Arab world, of course not the Arab world of itself. Which better proof of that than the fact to endorse and embrace and attempt to get out of this fascism, which is a real plague for the Arab world. So, in one word, we have in France, in French literature, a very famous quote, which is the bet of Pascal, le pari de Pascal, the bet of Blaise Pascal. According to our values, according also to our interests, both values and interests, both interests and values, I do believe from the bottom of my heart that we have little to lose and a lot to win from a successful Arab Spring. I thank you.